this exhibition is called Precious and Rare, and it's Islamic metalwork from the Courtauld. And originally it was meant to be at the Holborn from now, but it is being installed at the moment. So, you know, once the museum is open, you will be able to come and see it. And I just wanted to show you, this is the room in the Holborn where it's going to be. We've had some changes while we've been closed, and the central display cabinet, this we call it the ballroom table, has been taken out so that we can have lots of other display cases, and that's where this exhibition is going to be. And each object in the exhibition has its own display case. Now, I'm not going to show you all of them, but I just wanted to give you the kind of highlight. So there are 10 pieces of Islamic metalwork, and these objects date from the 13th to the 16th centuries. And when we talk about the Islamic world, we're talking about a world which was defined by similar cultures, but crosses over what is present day Iraq, Iran, Syria, Egypt, and Turkey. So it's a huge, vast expanse of, you know, an area of the world, if you like, that these objects come from. And there are also some objects which were made in imitation of these pieces from 16th century Venice, because at that time Venice was a kind of bridge between the Byzantine world and some of these countries that are now present day countries. Then they were different areas, and the Western world. So Venice, Venetian craftsmen began to copy some of the things that were traded there for, you know, English and Dutch and other groups of people who wanted these things, because I think the key thing to say about this is they're precious, and it's amazing that these things have survived and are in absolutely beautiful condition for us to see, because they you know, they are the height of this craft at this time, and the people that made them were incredibly skilled. And when you see them, the level of detail and pattern, these are handmade things. You know, every piece was made by hand and you know, hammered into place. So there's inlays, silver inlays into the metalwork, and there's a lot of information about this which we can share, but I'm not going to do that now. I just wanted to show you just a couple of pieces that I particularly love. This one, which is a 15th century bowl, we think from Egypt, and as well as the beautiful patterns and repeating patterns, some of these objects have poetry, calligraphic decoration within those patterns. And this bowl around the top, around kind of this part, has this bit of poetry, and it reads, "He who contemplates my beauty will find me a delight to the eye. I have a form which includes all the essence of good." So although if you look at this, I wouldn't have known that this beautiful poetry was kind of entwined in the patterns, but it's there, and anybody, the person that owned this, would have looked at this and been able to read it. And many of the pieces do have words within the patterns. And the other thing I just wanted to quickly show you is this. It's a very small piece. It's 5 centimeters, just over 5 centimeters, and it's a spherical pierced metalwork incense burner, and you can actually open it up. It's hinged, and you would put incense or myrrh or perfume substances in the middle with the burning coal, and then you could have rolled it across the ground or held it as a hand warmer, we think. But it's just exquisitely made, and this one has figures within it which represent what was then known about the planets. So it's a sort of astronomy piece, which it's just very, very interesting. So I'm going to stop talking now, but I hope I've just showed you a little of that world. And do come and visit. There's so much more to say about this. I've just given you a tiny little snapshot. We're hoping to have some other more in-depth talk, so there will be lots more going on around this exhibition, if you're interested. So now I'm going to hand over to Emma. We're delighted to welcome Emma. We've worked with her in the past, and she's developed today's activity. So over to you, Emma.
Thanks, Louise. That's lovely. And the designs on the metalwork are just amazing. There's such a lot to take inspiration from. They're just, yeah, it's just beautiful. So I can't wait to see it. So hello. During this lockdown, the third one, I started to suffer a bit. I was finding it much harder than I thought it would be. And I found that doing these little doodles, these Zen Doodles, as they're called, was really helpful for me, and just calming my mind slightly. And what I like about them is that they're all in little 4 centimeter boxes, so it's kind of like there's no expectation for anything to be perfect. In fact, the whole idea is to just kind of loosen yourself up and just play with them. And by dividing our little boxes into little sections, we can create some nice symmetry and start to replicate some of the patterns. So I'm going to switch my screen so that you can see my hands and see what I'm doing. Now, we did have some technical issues earlier, and it can be a little bit, the focus can go in and out, so I apologize in advance, but hopefully we can kind of get a gist of what I'm talking about. So here we go. So just tell me, because my screen there, okay, right. So the first one that I did, the first Zen doodle I ever did, was really simple, because it was just an exercise, like I say, in loosening up. And so there's no right or wrong. It's just simply a case of doing some wibbly wobbly lines across your page in no particular order or manner. They can go all over the place. It really doesn't matter, because it's just getting us loose. So there are my wibbly lines, and then within them you can just start to draw. Can you see okay? Bit by bit, you might want to kind of add another little line here, and away we go. You can just go on and on. But by starting a really simple pattern, you can immediately see how, just by filling it in with little lines, I'm going to try and not use all my lovely arty pens that I have, because I just want to use just one, so that if all you've got is a biro or a pencil, it doesn't matter. That's all you need. The idea is just to have a bit of fun. So I do this if I'm on the phone, especially. There's always kind of those little go-to doodles that we have. So that's one idea, and it's just to kind of begin to, like I say, to loosen up how your pen moves across the page. One of the things I did before I go any further is, on the worksheet, I suggested, rather than using a ruler to have to draw out your little squares each time, it's quite a nice idea if you get a cereal packet or something and draw out with your ruler, measure out a sequence of squares. If you have a craft knife, you can then cut it out so that you make a template like this, because then you can start to just place it on your page and start to draw your squares. It just makes it just saves you time. So this is kind of what I ended up with, because I can just place it on there and do it. So that's one thing that I suggest you do if you've got a craft knife. If you haven't, what you can do is just draw a square on a piece of cardboard that's 4 centimeters in square, and then you can just draw around it each time. It just saves time, because what you don't want is for this exercise to become boring in any way. The whole idea is it's just a little bit of fun. So this one is just a nice, I'm going to do another one while I talk to you, because this is another way of just loosening up, is you're just going to fill your page with all sorts of different sized circles. And then you just start, I'm not going to do the whole thing because I want to just kind of show you. You can then just start to fill it in. And it's amazing how small the circles then start to feel once you start to do the background. So I think, again, this is something that you can do and just lose yourself in it. It's very similar, isn't it, to the colouring in books, only we're just using black and white for now. So you get the idea. And what happens is, so I've done lots of, here's one I did earlier. So what happens is you end up with this kind of thing going on. So I want to show you the best. So these are kind of like the freehand kind of ideas that you can do. But if we start dividing our page, our little square across the diagonal, we can begin to start to create slightly more, what's the word, symmetrical pieces. So just using this idea, you could simply meet your diagonal and then change direction. And you can start with lines that are quite close together. Can you see that okay? There we go. Lines that are close together. Because you'll notice on the Islamic work, there's a lot of background where it's kind of like etched pieces, etched lines that do a fill. And then we can get them to go further apart. So you get that lovely perspective happening. Really simple. But what happens is when you fill the whole page, the whole square with this, actually takes on quite a nice pattern. And again, there's no technical artistry needed at all. It's just enjoying how the pen moves across the page. And then if you take that one step further, so I'm going to use my ruler here, and I draw my lines in pencil because then you can rub them out afterwards. I'm going to use exactly the same idea, only this time you have to shout if you can't see. I'm just going to draw a giant leaf, and I'm using that line there as my guide. And then we can just simply do the same thing, and we have our little leaf. I do another little line out here. I'm hoping you guys can't hear it, but in the background, I have a female cat that's in season and she's crying really loudly at the moment. So I hope you can't hear her. Here we go. So that's our little leaf. So again, it's really simple. And what happens is, I mean, you can just kind of play, because like you could do another little line here. This is the whole thing about the doodles, is you just start to fill the space. And because it's only 4 centimeters, it doesn't take long. And you just start to play with all the different patterns that can happen. And maybe we fill them in. There we go, that kind of thing. So that's dividing our square just in one diagonal. So we can get a bit more technical. There we go. So I don't know if you can see the pencil lines on here, but essentially what I've done is I've divided my square in half with my pencil, and then I've divided each half again. Now, you could, if you want to be really technical and you want to have absolute perfect symmetry, what you could do is measure it. You could measure each centimeter and draw the lines across. I'm actually just doing it just as a rough guide, but I'll divide it into half and then each half into quarters, rather than start at the bottom and try and guess it. I tend to get it wrong if I start at the bottom. If you divide it in half and then divide each one in half again, it's easier. So this one, let me find my little, oh, this is a nice one to do. Okay, so with these, I'm going to start with some dots, and these dots are going to be joined up in a second with my petals. So every other, let's have a look, yeah. So I've got my little dots, So these miniature petal ideas again, so like just like we did just now, only much, much smaller. And again, is if I do it in pink, you'll see where the dots are. So for every other intersection, so it'll be down here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So then we're going to join each dot with a petal. And look how quickly we're creating a really nice stop there, or we can keep going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my ruler and again, just draw in diagonals here and here. And I'm going to, I don't know how much you can see of the pencil lines I've drawn, but I'm going to join these two lines here as well, across here like this. So essentially, here and here. I've divided it diagonally as well. Now, what we can do is where my little pencil lines are here, is very carefully do some of those smaller lines I was showing you a minute ago. And I'm just using those pencil lines as my guide. Where am I? And then if I change direction here, it's fiddly, but it actually looks really nice when it's done. So you get this lovely, the shift of direction just adds a little bit of perspective. I'm just going to draw the other lines here. So in essence, you can kind of see it's a series of squares divided into triangles, and then we're just playing with those pencil line shapes, which we're going to rub out at the very end. Using one of these pens, which is a kind of, it's I think architects use them, it's an artist, it's a fine nib. You could use a biro.
Yeah.
So I'll keep going briefly just to show you how it looks. There we go. But you get the idea, and the pattern is beginning to form. So we have this lovely symmetrical shape that's got that, oh dear, can you hear my cat thing? She's singing. There we go. So you get the idea. So in a very short period of time, you can create these really lovely patterns just by dividing your page into a grid of dots. So another one doing the same idea is, let's have a look. So we can, so can you see, I've divided this one. Can you see those pencil lines okay? Are they just a little dot in the middle of each square to begin with? This will just be my guide. You can get paper that's just got dots all over it in a nice grid formation. Actually, I think they've got it at WH Smith's. When we can, actually, you can go into WH Smith's. I don't know if you know this, but the post office is in there. So they've got an art department upstairs. My daughter and I discovered this last week. So we'd spent hours buying stationery. Right, now in our little squares, I'm just going to do some small crosses. Now they're not going to go right to the edge of each square deliberately. And you'll see why in a moment. Sort of do a fast forward. And then you can just do, I'll show you in a sort of on a larger scale. We're just going to do little swirls like this. And we're going to do them on the edge of each line here, but we're staying, it's really important that you stay within your pencil lined box, because each square is going to meet the next. So the swirls are going to touch just, I need to put my glasses on for this. So once they start to meet up, you then get this lovely pattern in the middle here as well. So again, the 101 things you can do when you start dividing your boxes up. I won't finish the whole thing, but you get the idea. You get that lovely, here is one I did earlier, which is, it's that one there. I'll try and, there we go. Yes, we can kind of, you know, we can create something like this. Again, dividing, you can begin to see, right, how we do this. You're dividing your square up. So I take like, I do a larger version. Hang on, what am I doing? There we go. It's a larger version of what I've just shown you, but I want to just, can you, I'm not doing it in pen, am I? I need to do it in pen. Because I just want to show you how to get the shading, because you can get these nice sort of more 3D effect. Just so there's nothing technical about it at all. It does help to turn the square each time. Oh, do these side ones as well. So this is kind of like we're doing a repeat pattern that could just go on forever and ever. So you could do lots of these and join them together. So these are our little shaded petals. And then if you wanted, if you just follow the contours of each petal to the middle. And then turn it and do it the other way. You can begin to see that's kind of like an enlarged version of this little one here. Is this all making sense?
Yeah.
The sort of more freehand version it's quite nice sometimes. I quite like kind of using nature as so some of these are very sort of geometric, especially this one, you know, it's very sort of, it's all lines, this one especially, but you can just be a lot more free flowing. This is a classic that I think we're all familiar with, but just even something like this, you know, you just get into a little flow. And it's amazing how quickly your hand starts to build up confidence. This is what I like about doodling. There's no right or wrong.
I think, Emma, as you're doing it, we're all getting mesmerized. We're all just sort of watching you do it, because it's actually really calming watching somebody else do it as well. It's amazing. I can see how calming it is to sort of to actually do it, but even to watch it has that.
Oh, I'm so pleased, because it is. It's just, I really just encourage you all to just have a piece of paper and divide it up into small squares, because it's something about the small square that for me was the breakthrough moment. It wasn't a big empty page, it was just a small space, and so suddenly it kind of, you know, you just play. Now we just did the shading a minute ago with this one, and again, you know, if you just shade, you can transform it completely. Oh, my little cat, she's crying out loud. Definitely helps to keep turning the square.
So Emma, with yours, you've built up a grid
Yes.
of different, you know, different patterns. And so your grid has how many squares in it? About.
So this one, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
So I've done 3 by 3,
Yeah.
only because the page I had, it just fitted really nicely, because I had a sketchbook that was this size. Can't really see, can you? Because the camera's too close, but it just fitted nicely onto there. That's why I did it that size. And actually, as a little tip, I found having a piece of paper or a sketch pad that's this size is much easier than an A4, because weirdly, so I'm just going to come back to my face. Here we go. Here I am. Because I found that if I'm sketching on a page this size, I'm kind of leaning over too much to try and do it. And as you've been seeing, when you're it's easier to turn your piece of paper. So actually a smaller piece of paper is better than a larger piece. That's what I found. So you know, I started doing them in here because I just wanted a nice book with them all in. I started breaking my own rules, which is, it doesn't matter what it looks like, it's just, you know, have a bit of fun doing it. But I found definitely this kind of size much easier to work with. So I just, yeah, this is just an old cereal packet but you do need a craft knife for this, and I know not everybody has one, which is why I figured just cutting out a square just makes it easier, because you just want to be able to just, you know, plonk it on, draw around, and then just go. You don't want to be getting your ruler out. It is quite boring having to draw 4 centimeters by 4 centimeters. I mean, they can be bigger, but I don't recommend you go too big, because if you get too big, it starts to become this big space that you feel like you've got to fill.